VeChain to 5x.
Let's get into it.
So guys, today we're going to be talking about VeChain and how I think it's going to be very, very close to 5xing real soon. As we get into this video, guys, if you do find it useful and informative, go ahead and hit that like button. We both really do appreciate it. And if you happen to be new to the channel and you're not yet subscribed, then why not consider subscribing to the channel? You'll be kept up to date with all those new cryptocurrencies, those hidden gems, technical analysis, and news. It is free. You'll stay well informed, so why not? With that said, Chris, anything else you'd like to add before we jump on down to the desktop?
Yeah, we do cover other projects, not just ones we've got pulls for. Love this project nonetheless. Let's get into it, Nick.
Fantastic. Right, so guys, this is VeChain to the USDT daily chart, and Binance is the data source. We're going to kickstart things just by taking a quick look at what's been going on recently here for VeChain, and specifically the VET token. And then we're going to talk about how this thing could be ready to kind of make that move for a 5x position up to about 90 cents. So at the point of recording this video, we're about 18.2 cents for a VET token, and it has been performing interestingly over the last little while. So we can see how we found that upper resistance up here at 25 cents, and this area of this particular wick here on the 7th of May. Now, since then, we obviously have had that kind of downward trend. We found good support down here at 18.7 during Bitcoin's correction. We had another kind of correction that actually pulled us below there, but we found good support on the 50 moving average, and that actually held up a couple of times. And we also pulled a wick down a little bit lower yesterday during Bitcoin's correction there, or the bit of fear that was up for sale, courtesy of both Vitalik and Elon. Now, ultimately, that market is reversing. We can see that happening. It's really hard to not get a reversal when everything is oversold, and ultimately, we're finding that the resistance up here is that previous area of support at 18.7 cents. So right now we are up against a bit of resistance, and I do think there's going to be a little bit more pain before we start to see the really parabolic moves to the upside. And I'm going to run you through what I'm seeing here in the data. So straight away we can see that the daily relative strength index has actually come down into a pretty good level. It's almost down to our 37.41 area, which is the area where VeChain tends to have a good balance on this relative strength index, and it usually goes up into overbought if it goes down to that line. So we are fast approaching that area on the daily RSI. With that being said, the volumes also started to spike up yesterday, and we'll have to see if today's volumes also kind of stick to that same pattern. Are they going to start increasing day on day now, or are the volumes likely to continue to downward spiral? And the lower level charts here, the 4-hourly and the hourly, will give us a bit of an indication as to what the sentiment is looking like in the market right now when it comes to volume. We can also see that the 100 and 200 moving averages are actually quite significantly lower on this chart and away from those candles than maybe you would expect to see on the 4-hourly or the hourly. So the daily, they are starting to narrow in, they are starting to get close together, but there is still quite a bit of distance between the 50 and the 100 moving average. And that is courtesy because, ultimately how much VeChain has actually moved in such a short space of time. Despite loads of people in the space kind of saying VeChain doesn't do anything, we can see that actually since the crash over in May 2020, VeChain actually accomplished 6,827% in gains, right? So that's not doing nothing. That is a very significant move since May of last year. So in 1 year, I'm not sure what banks will give you a 6,827% return on your investment, but that's what VeChain did for you here. And of course, if you were to look potentially even earlier, just look at this year, it would still have made very, very tidy sums in terms of profitability. So VeChain has been moving quite well in a relatively short space of time in terms of just the price of the VET token. With that being said, what VeChain are actually doing in the real world is, inspirational to many different blockchains. Ultimately, there's a lot of chains out there that just simply do not actually deliver what they're setting out to do. And ultimately, VeChain is out there hustling hard and actually getting so many partnerships, it's kind of off the chart. It definitely stands out from the crowd. And it is one of those projects that, I have complete faith and confidence in that it's not going anywhere because it is so heavily adopted by very large enterprises around the globe. So I'm not going to talk about the partnerships and all that kind of good stuff, Chris, because we've done videos specifically dedicated to that, right? And ultimately, those partnerships are just continuously growing, right? They're not going down. People aren't leaving VeChain. They're just keep onboarding new projects, new enterprises, and the ecosystem for VeChain continues to grow and it flourishes well. Now, we did a whole video on that, so go check out the partnership video if that's of your interest. Now, in this particular video, it's going to talk about why we think a 5x for this project is going to be due in course, right? Now, we've kind of just spoken through this daily chart and to how this one's looking actually pretty good. It's looking like it's starting to gear up for a pretty good move, but we are expecting a slight pullback as we find resistance at the moment. The volumes just are not quite there yet, and overall the sentiment within the whole crypto space right now is not buying. It's kind of trying to wait to see how things are playing out. Now, ultimately, things yesterday got so low that they had no choice but to go up. Traders would have noticed that everything was oversold, and therefore were picking up cryptocurrencies at an absolute steal. But until that volume comes in, you're not going to see huge spikes in price, right? So we are expecting a bit of a pullback, and what we're going to do is just pull this down into our 4-hourly. And what we can see is, whilst that price was moving up, the volumes were coming down, okay? Which meant that ultimately you have probably traders and a few, tech-savvy people who are aware of what's going on here, buying up the crypto asset at a lower value once it had been oversold. But ultimately, the volumes are decreasing over time as the price is moving up, which means there's not many people actually interacting with it. They're waiting to see what's next, like what's going to happen next. And here you can also see the resistance line, right, for VeChain here at 18.7 cent. That's obviously the main barrier there that we're really struggling to push through. So I think people are just kind of waiting for the sentiment in the markets to change, and then obviously I think that's going to power on through. You can also see from the register strength index that it was oversold, and it's obviously started to move on up out of this area, but it is still incredibly low. It's only just above the 40 level. So this is 42, and VeChain can obviously go right up into the overbought area. But if you want that to happen, that sentiment in the market has to change, and you have to have significant volume coming back in. So right now we have got a lot of space to grow into, but there's not enough volume to really take advantage of it. So we're waiting for that sentiment to come in and change. That will power us through that 18.7 cent resistance area. If that volume doesn't come in the next kind of 8 hours or so, Chris, I would say that actually we'll utilize this relative strength index whilst just trading sideways, and then have another pullback, okay? And then we'll probably look to pull back a little bit lower, maybe towards that 15.8 cent area, around that area there, another pullback into there before really having that moment of a breakout event where we really push on up ahead. And now we can see obviously the moving averages, the 50, the 100, the 200 moving averages here on this 4-hourly chart are above the current price of VET. So again, the current price is below average pricing. We have low register strength index, and we have low volume. Everything is ready to kind of go, but if that sentiment isn't there, we aren't going to see it straight away. So ultimately, if the markets continue to be a bit on the fence, they don't know how to react to two billionaires duking it out, then ultimately we're trying to just having to wait for that to fizzle down and that news to become old news for then the sentiment to change in the markets. So we are looking for that change, and that will be the catalyst that catapults a lot of these things away. Right now, there was a fantastic opportunity at the point of recording this video for that sentiment to change, because everything is geared up, ready to go. But if that sentiment doesn't change within the next few hours, it isn't going to happen. We're going to have the pullback instead. So it can go both ways in that scenario. Now, what we're going to do is just pull this down into the hourly, and here you can see that we're starting to use a lot of this relative strength index without actually doing anything to the price. And this is the worst case scenario. This is where the volume drops off. You continue to trade sideways here against that resistance line. You can obviously see that the resistance of the 50 moving average also coming in, and you can see that the relative strength index is at 53. So we're going up on the relative strength index to the overbought area without actually pushing the price up. We're just constantly coming up against barriers, and this is just because there's no volume there. There's no one really interacting with VeChain in this particular scenario. So in my mind, we're looking to have that pullback, ultimately to take more advantage over, the relative strength index and the volume and the positions that everything is set in at the moment. So for the short term, we're looking for a short-term pullback just to further correct that relative strength index. Like I said, we could be looking at about 15 cent at a worst case scenario, in my opinion. And then that should have everything ready to go once that sentiment changes again. So right now we have that major resistance. We're coming up against that. And then once that kind of corrects back down, everything should be primed and ready to go. So ultimately, I think the sentiment in the market will change within the next few days if it doesn't happen today. And then obviously we're going to start seeing some pretty good, interesting price discovery from many of these altcoins that have been hit pretty hard recently. Now, why do we think 5x? Well, 5x is quite an important milestone when it comes to VeChain. So lots of people in the space call for like a $1 VeChain or a $1.50, $2 VeChain, $5 VeChain, whatever it is, right? But a lot of that isn't actually backed up by the technical data that you see here. Now, a 5x actually aligns quite nicely with the top extension level of the Fibonacci extensions, right? So the very first price target that the extensions show us is 40 cent. Which is approximately like a 2x. Then you have 60 cent, which is approximately 3. Then it comes up to just under 80 here at the 3.618 area. This is a 80 cent area. And then up the top, you have 92 cents. So a 5x on the current position is approximately 90 cents. So it actually ties in very nicely with where we see that top extension being. Now, ultimately, we don't think that that could, is the limit. That's just what the technical data is suggesting to us at the moment. But it obviously has the potential to go much higher than even 90 cent. It all depends on, what happens in the space, how the marketing goes, how much FOMO goes into it. Does it get listed on Coinbase, for example, right? Where does all that mass adoption come from? And ultimately, when it comes to VeChain, Chris, it is incredibly well positioned to be the project that gets an awful lot of FOMO. And the reason that I say this, and chip in if you think I'm wrong in any way, Chris, but ultimately, when you get new investors in this space, they want to do a little bit of research into what they're buying. Maybe they've never heard of a VET or what a VeChain is. First thing they're going to do is go hit up Google. What is VeChain? Or VeChain news or whatever it is, right? They'll hit Google on it, and they'll find so much fantastic news and partnerships with companies and organizations around the world that they're already familiar with. What other blockchains are they going to be able to do that? What other blockchain technologies are they going to be able to Google search and find that they're partnered up with the likes of BMW, Renault, Walmart, China, H&M, Louis Vuitton, you name it. And there's going to be like fantastic news around VeChain. So from a FOMO point of view, I see VeChain doing incredibly well because anyone who's going to be potentially new investors and potentially investing in VeChain or looking to invest in VeChain might want to hit up Google, might want to find out what this particular project is about. And straight away, they're going to find very familiar brands that are already utilizing VeChain as a technology source. So I think it's very well positioned to do incredibly well during this bull run. But Chris, I've rambled on for quite a bit now. What's your thoughts on all of this?
So, I still don't think we're at that point in time where people think like you and I. And what I mean by this is, you're talking about people Googling the project and finding out all the wonderful partnerships and stuff like that. I really don't think people are really doing that. Like, I don't know personally whether I align to that. I kind of feel like the coins like Dogecoin, Shiba, whatever they're called, all these crap coins, sort of highlights that to me, that people aren't looking at fundamentals and investing like, I don't know, with an investor's mindset just yet. But with that said, I think, it's definitely something to touch on. I feel that it's really important that people do look at the fundamentals of these projects. I kind of feel like we're midway in the bull run cycle at the moment. For those of you that are scared by like the small retrace that we had yesterday based on a couple of I don't know, idiots with lots of money, and I say that in jest a little bit, I guess, because I'm not really for like Elon Musk's tweets pumping or even dumping. You know what I mean? Like, I don't agree with either, right? It's just market manipulation, however you want to look at it. And, that's just my view on it. I wouldn't tweet. I find it kind of embarrassing seeing CEOs of projects sort of begging to have time with Elon to talk about their project, or just, pitching like that their projects are energy efficient. I just think all that stuff's just a little bit embarrassing myself. But with all that said, fundamentals are things that you've got to start looking at. We're roughly midway through the bull run cycle, in my opinion. For me, in the coming weeks, you're going to start to see the stronger projects start to sort of pull away from the crowd. And that's why we say you've got to start looking at the fundamentals of the projects, right? Just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below if you think I'm right or whether I'm wrong. Really interested to get your views and opinions. But with that said, we're going to end up with tokenized property, tokenized stocks. We're already starting to see that stuff happening. The adoption is coming. We've got the NFT things, aspect of like, I guess, use case going on. I don't think that's fully developed into what it's going to be just yet, which I think is interesting. You've got Vechain also entering that space. I just think there's so much more to come, right? Even in this bull cycle, right? Or super cycle, however you want to frame it. But I think there's some food for thought there. But yeah, interested to know what everyone else thinks. Like, I align with a dollar Vechain this bull market, and for all those haters out there, we do actually get some of these price predictions right. You might want to go back to some of the earlier videos and you'll see some of the price points have been taken out, right? Like 𝗲.
Of course. I mean, ultimately, we're not saying it's going to go 5x tomorrow. So for all you impatient people out there, you're going to have to wait, unfortunately. But, this year is going to see some phenomenal gains be made. Patience is a virtue in most cases. So with all that said, done and out of the way, we hope you found this video useful and informative. If you have, hit that like button. We both really do appreciate that. And of course, if you're new to the channel and you want to stay up to date with all those new cryptocurrencies, hidden gems, then why not consider subscribing to the channel? By becoming a subscriber, you'll be kept up to date with absolutely everything we do here. It is free. You'll stay well informed. So why not? With that said, done and out of the way, we hope you have a fantastic day, guys, and we'll catch you all in the next one.
Yeah, take care.